Top 10 Strongest Militaries in Africa 2021. Hello Displorers, welcome to another informative video presented to you by Displore, and thanks for watching. The strength and power of a country lies in several aspects, including its soft power, economy, as well as its military prowess. Countries such as China, the US, the UK are feared or respected because of their military strength, and in Africa we also have military giants. Countries which by their military strength not only leave a remarkable imprint when torched, but are feared by many of its neighbors. Hence in this video, we shall count down the top 10 strongest militaries in Africa in 2021. The strongest in terms of military in the world are rated using the number of personnel, chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear weapons or WMDs, armory, tanks, fighter jets, and much more, which makes its military power to reckon with and not mess with in any conflict. To determine these countries, the power index of each country was used, in which over 50 factors were compared to determine a given nation's power index score. Global Firepower (GFP) is one of those organs which have played an active role in determining the power index of countries based on their military forces. GFP based its rating on criteria such as the number of serving military members, the naval force fuel availability for military operations, the number of jet fighters, the defense budget, and logistics flexibility. According to the 2021 rankings, here are the top 10 strongest military in Africa in 2021. If you're new here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. Number 10. Sudan. Power Index Score 1.5159. Sudan's military had enjoyed very high ratings in the past, but recently they are termed the heroes turned villains after prolonged protests and a sit-in by protesters at its headquarters. The military toppled long-time ruler Omar al-Bashir. However, reports of military brutality coming out of Sudan as talks between civilian representatives and the military reached a deadlock has been the headlines of the activities in recent times. The military strength grew through the decades of al-Bashir's rule and has received funding from Saudi Arabia in the last few months after grabbing power. Most of this equipment is supplied from Russia and China, as the country is under sanctions from Western countries. In all, with all active military forces over 104,000 personnel, 191 aircraft, 410 combat tanks, 403 armored fighting vehicles, and a total of 18 naval assets, Sudan's military is currently the 10th strongest military in Africa. Number 9. Tunisia. Power Index Score 1.4134. The Tunisian Armed Forces is composed of 3 mechanized brigades, 1 Saharan Territorial Group, 1 Special Forces Group, and 1 Military Police Regiment. They have contributed to peacekeeping missions, including during the Rwandan genocide, and were forced into border clashes with Libyan rebels in 2011 during their civil war. With a huge equipment stash of over 900 armored fighting vehicles, 350 tanks, a manpower of over 5 million personnel, 139 pieces of aircraft, and a total naval strength of 50, the Tunisian military has solidified its spots amongst Africa's strongest. Tunisia has recently managed to have a stable government and reduce the ISIS threat on its eastern border, but one major problem the force still faces is its relatively small size, but that has not slowed down their efficiency. Number 8. Libya. Power Index 1.2736. Stepping up from its position of last year, Libyan military is the 8th strongest in Africa with a power index score of 1.2736. The strength of Libya's military comes mainly from its large cache of equipment, despite a relatively small number of active troops. Further hampering Libya's abilities is the continuing violence and unrest stemming from the revolution which began in 2011. There has not been peace and stability in the north of Africa since the ousting of Muammar Gaddafi. The country is currently divided between the government in Tripoli and a rogue general, General Haftar, who enjoys the backing of Western powers such as the United States. The government in Tripoli is battling to keep the forces out of the city as it lacks a fully integrated force. Regardless, the country still has available 2,500 armored fighting vehicles, 500 tanks, 600 towed artillery pieces, 6,500 logistical vehicles, which is obviously acquired using its oil money. Number 7. Angola. Power Index Score 1.0799. The Angolan Armed Forces headed by Chief of Staff Geraldo Nunda succeeded the Armed Forces of the Liberation of Angola in 1991. It has 3 components: the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. The force owns 920 armored fighting vehicles, 300 tanks, 290 pieces of aircraft, and has a navy of 57 crafts. The revenues generated by oil sales and by petrol plus overseas dividends to the government permit Angola to have one of the strongest armies of the continent. The eggs from what the president calls the golden goose or oil reserves have allowed the southern African nation to fund a large military budget with an active force of up to 100,000 troops. Number 6. Ethiopia. Power Index Score 0.9895. As a landlocked country, Ethiopia has focused its resources on developing its army and air force to an impressive degree, and given that the GFP doesn't penalize landlocked countries for not having a naval force, it still remains amongst the strongest in Africa. Several hundred thousand personnel make up its current force, and it has significant numbers of land and air systems at its disposal. An enormous population allows Ethiopia to maintain a large fighting force and gives the country one of the greatest militaries of the continent. Despite being landlocked and not having the advantages of maritime border countries, the country has also enjoyed a cordial relationship with many of its neighbors, which has helped it fortify its position on the continent. With internal conflict and the threat of terrorist groups like Al-Shabaab, the military has worked tirelessly to bring order and stability in Ethiopia with its over 140,000 troops. Number 5. Morocco. Power Index score 0.8739. Highly dependent on foreign equipment, the Royal Moroccan Armed Forces has been involved in the conflict with the Polisario, a liberation movement fighting for the independence of Western Sahara, and numerous other peacekeeping missions, including in Somalia. The military has at its disposal 2,800 armored fighting vehicles, 1,400 tanks, about 330 total aircraft pieces, and a total naval strength of 121. The leader of the northern African nation, King Mohammed VI, made a call for the government to recruit 10,000 Moroccans into compulsory military service in 2019, which increased to 15,000 in 2020. The Royal Army has an active force of over 200,000 personnel, and the Army also kicked off joint military exercise with the US-dubbed African Lion 2019, which was focused on training it for the first against violent extremism and terrorism. However, despite its large budget, funding partners such as the US have reported that it remains plagued by corruption, an inefficient bureaucracy, and low levels of education in the ranks. The development of most of its forces in Western Sahara remains its biggest weaknesses today. Number 4. Nigeria. Power Index score 0.6241. Nigeria is the most populated country in Africa, and so it comes as no surprise that it has one of the largest militaries in terms of personnel. There are several 100,000 troops that comprise the Nigerian Armed Forces, Army, Navy, and Air Force. Like Algeria, an abundant domestic oil supply eases the financial burden of involvement in military conflict. In addition to the large personnel, Nigeria has more than 1,500 armored vehicles, 400 tanks, and 6,000 logistical vehicles at its disposal, as well as nearly 300 aircraft and 25 high-powered naval vessels. However, this strong army has proven incapable of defending its citizens in northern Nigeria against Boko Haram. It seems like the war from within is more difficult to handle than the war from abroad, or the army is more trained for conventional warfare rather than the guerrilla tactics used by the insurgents. Number 3. South Africa. Power Index score 0.5665. South Africa uses its highly advanced military for peacekeeping and international cooperations. It has not been involved in any international military conflict recently. Well, conflict or no conflict, the South African army has not reduced its defense budget, which currently stands at a whopping $4.6 billion. Its aircraft and naval vessels are notoriously well equipped with the latest technology, and though the country has less than 100,000 active frontline personnel, it has the capabilities and manpower for much more. Add to that a vast array of land system technology, and the South African military is a force to be reckoned with, or not trifled with. Number 2. Algeria. Power Index score 0.4439. Algeria has a large maritime border, which it has managed to take advantage of. Algeria has developed all its military capabilities to an impressively modern degree, including its land, sea, and air forces. Algeria's active frontline personnel number more than 130,000 troops, and it has nearly 2,200 armored fighting vehicles at its disposal. Algeria also has the added benefit of its own oil reserves, allowing it to use its own fuel to power tanks, aircraft carriers, naval vessels, and more. The country is experiencing turmoil after its long-time president stepped down, but the military has also found a voice as instability and civil unrest persist. The army chief has voiced his concerns on the proposed delay to the elections, which may fuel further unrest. The army in Algeria is the only entity able to oppose effectively the Islamic forces which almost took over the country after the independence. Number 1. Egypt. Power Index score 0.2216. Egypt puts itself over the top with regard to military strength due to the sheer size of its armed forces of nearly 500,000 personnel serving on its active frontline force, far surpassing all its African counterparts. It has nearly 10,000 armored fighting vehicles, 60,000 logistical vehicles, about 1,000 aircraft, and large oil reserves from which to draw. The military has been somewhat undermined in the wake of the Egyptian revolution, but the military has been gaining a grip on power since the military coup that topped Morsi and put al-Sisi in power, making it stronger than ever. What greatly sets it apart is its naval strength, which includes traditional carriers as well as nuclear-powered submarines. In the constitutional referendum that were held, Proposed amendments gave the army greater powers that activists say may lead to interventions in civil matters. The country is only one from Africa in the world's top 10, ranking 9th. There you have it, explorers. Those were the top 10 strongest militaries in Africa in 2021. Thanks for watching this video, and if you did enjoy this video, do want to give it a thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe and share with your friends.